All right, let's get into today's big headlines. It's great to have back Rowan Dean, host of Outsiders, here on Credlin.
Good to be back, Peter.
We missed you. We all missed you.
Thank you.
I know that 91 doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot when you think that it's an 8-fold increase in forced marriage. And statistics are some of these girls are as young as 9 years of age, taken out of Australia. And that website I referred to, My Blue Sky, Rowan, it's chilling because it has all of these ways where it helps these women hide their tracks digitally, go and buy a burner phone, how to set up a network of support with teachers that you trust, etc. It's a real problem. Yeah,
it's terrifying. That was a great interview. I mean, this is the joys of multiculturalism. We were promised that multiculturalism was all about great restaurants and all cultures were equal, but the reality is, of course, quite different. And suddenly Australia finds itself lumbered with this problem, as do many Western countries, where people from other countries come in here and they want to carry on the same, what we would regard as barbaric practices: forced marriage, female genital mutilation, honour killings, so on. And what do we do about it? The left would tell us, oh, no, that's their, we've got to understand their values, etc. But the reality is you're talking about young girls' lives being completely and utterly destroyed. And there are several of them who have been brave enough to come out and resist this. They've had to leave their particular religion, and one of the things wasn't mentioned in that interview was, of course, that largely, not exclusively, this is Islamic practices in Islamic countries, also African, North African, also, Indian, Hindu. And I noticed that they printed these brochures in English, and the reason for not putting them into any other language, you would have thought they should be in Arabic and Urdu and possibly other North African languages, but they printed them in English for whatever reason. They couldn't afford to put them in other languages. But we have this reluctance to name the cultures that are responsible for this. And I find that a bit, where on the one hand, taxpayers are spending money to make sure this doesn't happen, to protect girls who are born in this country, raised in this country, educated in this country. The education should go a lot further than just bathrooms and toilets at the airport. It should be in the schools. It should be elsewhere.
I did ask a question, actually my producers asked a question about predominance of countries involved here, and we got sort of a very safe answer from the AFP that didn't tell us anything. But of course, when you go to the website, you can get translations in different languages, and they're all the languages of the hotspots you would expect.
And it ain't French, and it ain't
French, and it ain't Italian. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, I think it was worth putting it on tonight.
Definitely.
I know people don't want to hear about it, but it's a real issue. Eight-time.
But also, Peter, there are those women, Yasmin Mohammed, who we had on Outsiders, and there are others who have been brave enough to leave. There's the Australian girl whose name escapes me at the moment. And they've set up their own support groups for women from these cultures, because the likelihood of them, if they break free from this, they're in for a terrible time. They lose their family, they lose their society, they lose their neighbourhood. They are incredibly brave women, and there are support groups for them.
All right, well, let's keep talking about Islamic brides. Christina Keneally wants us to bring them all home because somehow being a woman means you can't possibly be a terrorist over in Islamic State land. But of course, we know that often the women were the terrorists and certainly been involved in activity that warrants further investigation. I just don't think any Australians are really on her side. I think it's madness. And as I said in my editorial, I think most Australians would say these women, not the children, but these women can rot in hell.
Well, I agree with you on that, but I'm going to say something controversial. For the first time ever, I actually feel sorry for these women who had joined ISIS, because everything has gone wrong for them. They lost their caliphate, they lost their husbands, and now they've got Christina Keneally rooting for them, which means forget it. Ask Bill Shorten, ask anyone that Christina Keneally has rooted for, you lose. Sorry, women, you're going to lose. And if Christina Keneally's in your corner, it don't look so good. But jokes aside, she's completely wrong on this. Australians, as I said before, we were sold a big story about multiculturalism. Part of the deal never, ever was bringing people back who had committed to...
Come on. Yeah. I know you know that they weren't naive, but listen to Keneally, and it's like they were somehow on this Islamic state Tinder, and they swiped the wrong way, and they ended up in a country they didn't want to be in and marry some idiot that they want to be married. No way known. Yeah. It was widely publicised at the time that if they went into these prescribed areas, they would be breaking the law. They went over there to get pregnant to men most of them had never even met, to breed the caliphate,
Absolutely.
the cubs of the caliphate.
Absolutely.
So they are absolutely up to their necks in this.
And when I was in London, there's a big case there with a woman who's come back, and they're trying to, can she stay, can she not? And the government's been firm and saying, no, she can't. And it's a similar story. I mean, if you go through all the hoops to get there, you know precisely what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're not being fooled. You know that you are joining a terrorist organisation. You know about the decapitating of Yazidis and
man
rapes.
Or not. I have no sympathy whatsoever. All right, other issues. What about pill testing? The coroner, we don't know it's necessarily going to be in the coroner's report, but there's plenty of discussion today about draft reports that have been circulated to other authorities that indicate the coroner will recommend pill testing, call for a standing down of police outside these music festivals, less dogs, less testing, less searching of bags and other things. This is sort of a backdoor way to legalise what shouldn't be legalised, isn't it?
Well, this is absolutely. This is the insane hypocrisy of the left, Peter. The Greens would no doubt be supporting this, and the more left elements of the Labor Party, who would be saying, yeah, this is great, this is great. I don't understand the leftist mentality, the nanny state mentality that says, we're going to shut down all of Sydney because of a punch.
But you can have drugs.
Exactly. We're doing all these terrible things to people. But let's let our kids just go and take as many drugs as they want. Let's set up festivals for them. But it's all fine. So where's our duty of care to the kids? That's what it's all about. And the society has a duty of care to its kids. And I'm sorry, as you said before, they are, call me old-fashioned, but it doesn't sound like music to me. But anyway, they're supposedly music festivals, but they're not. They're drug festivals.
So what about the sanctions on the organisers? Because they make
that's where we should be. That's where we should be looking at. Exactly.
The taxpayers have to fork out for the police.
We shut down half.
Yes.
We shut down half the pubs in Sydney because of a one-punch hit, and yet we let any old Tom, Dick and Harry set up a music festival, turn out this unlistenable dirge, and sell whatever they want, and no one bats an eyelid. License them at least.
Is there a Machiavellian Darwin theory here that if they're stupid enough to ingest this sort of rubbish, knowing what they do, we should let them at it?
No, I think it's more that the left, the hard left, particularly the Greens, and we saw it with the Extinction Rebellion and that, drugs play a big part in their culture, and so that they want to get the votes of people of that mentality, so they make it as easy as possible to take drugs. And that's what the Greens are about, that's what the left is about. And as I said, as a libertarian, great, make your own choice as an individual, but as a society, we do have a duty of care, whether it's licensing the venues or whatever, because we do it in everything else. Why aren't we doing it to help our kids?
Yeah, well, a publican who served booze to someone who went out there and hit someone in a car or caused another sort of death would be liable. They are liable under law. So why are the drug organisers, not festival organisers, they're drug organisers, why are they allowed to go away with it?
Absolutely. If we talk about, for example, the same-sex marriage debate, one of the more convincing arguments in that debate was, well, there are kids who might commit suicide because they're bullied or whatever for their gender or sexuality, and why should they feel this way? So we're terribly concerned about certain kids, but other kids, just let them go loose. Don't worry about it. Don't put up any blocks or checks. Get rid of the police. Call it pill testing, which we know is meaningless, and let them go for it. It does not make sense, and we do have a duty of care.
Malcolm Turnbull's big book's going to come out. There was a story in the paper today. It's due out. Apparently, it's a huge tome.
I'm sure it is.
It's got lots to say.
Can you imagine? Oh, God.
All he could have done, but he didn't do.
Oof.
Yep, due out in April. I had to laugh. I was looking at the Australian online, and there was a whole lot of comments, and they were entertaining immediately under this story. I put one of them up on the screen. Dear old Barry and Brendan caught my eye. Barry said Peter Van Onselen has ordered his already and is getting excited. Well, that'd be true. But Brendan said chapter 1 is I stuck a knife into this guy and then I moved on. Chapter 2, I stuck a knife into this guy and then I moved on. Chapter 3, chapter 4. Chapter 5 was hundreds stuck a knife into me. I cried a lot. Well, I reckon Brendan's right there.
Absolutely. Well, it's called a bigger picture, but I think a bigger ego would probably be a better title, or even a bigger yawn, because, seriously, is there anyone less interesting than Malcolm Turnbull? He's clearly interested in himself. He's managed to write this massive, great thing. I don't think that many people are really that interested. The newspapers will ramp it up and there will be all that sort of stuff. But really, the guy, what has he got to offer? He's even got less to offer than Kevin Rudd. At least Kevin Rudd, there were some interesting things there. Malcolm Turnbull's time as Prime Minister was a complete failure. On every level, a failure. And the country's kind of forgotten about him. That's the weird thing.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the Morrison win, because I think if it had gone the other way, it would have been used by Turnbull as the argument for,
of course,
if he kept me, this would have been different, the departure of me, but of course it wasn't. Just before we go, you've come back from the UK. We can talk all about the Queen's speech another time. I'm just interested for your assessment on the ground, talking to Brits. How are they coping with this constant circus that is Brexit, and where do you think they're going to get to on the 31st?
They're going to leave, and the fascinating thing, the key insight that came out of the two weeks in London and Brighton, I spoke to a lot of people, cab drivers, barbers, haircuts, things like that. The same sentiment kept coming up again and again and again, which is that people who originally voted Remain have now decided, A, they lost, B, can we just get on with leaving Brexit and get on with our lives? So the sentiment has shifted. A lot of people, family members and others, new relatives who had been passionate about Remain, are now saying, no, we can't stay in. We've got to get out, get the brake on and get on with the rest of our lives. That's the sentiment. There's no sentiment running the other way saying, oh, I voted for Brexit, but now I wish we could stay. None.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, it will be interesting. Only a couple of weeks to go.
Watch Farage, Nigel Farage. He's still got a big part to play, Peter.
Rowan Dean, mate, Nigel Farage. He'll be critical, absolutely critical.